Not all macro lenses are created equal, and in a macro market with Ari and Cook, it's hard to break through. But DZO Films is trying to change that with the Gnosis, a set of 5K lenses meant to go toe-to-toe with the giants. But these lenses have an image problem, and it might not be the one coming from the camera. Hey guys, it's Nick from the On Specs, and today we have the DZO Films Gnosis macro lenses, a lineup of lenses that are trying to tackle the high-quality macro lens market. We'll be looking at the DZO 32, 65, 90mm Gnosis lenses, and comparing them against some of the earlier lenses we reviewed on this channel. We'll be assessing whether their affordable price translates to a compromise in quality, or if they're worth all of the money. Now, the DZO Gnosis are attempting to fill a gap in what is otherwise a desert of macro lens options in the cinema space. There isn't a huge variety of lenses on the market at this price point, let alone a set featuring a 90mm lens. The DZO Gnosis set could be a game changer at this bargain of a price, and we excitedly bought them to see if they were worth the hype. But for us to be willing to fully commit, they were really going to have to perform at the quality of what's expected on a commercial set, and be something that we were comfortable with bringing to the set. Generally, there were only two macro cinema lenses that you see on commercial sets, the Ari macros and the Cook macros S4. Both are incredible lenses with incredible histories and distinct looks. These are the top-of-the-line lenses, but they still rent for a fair price, meaning that on a commercial product work, you'll often see them on hand. The Gnosis DZO macro lenses have to be pretty heavy lifters to compete for a spot on commercial sets. But as an affordable alternative, we really want to see how they compared, especially against our other lenses, the Sigma FF Primes and Tokina lenses, which are similarly or lesser priced. But before we check out the competitors, what do we know about the DZO brand? A relative newcomer to the cinema lens space, DZO Film is a Chinese company that specializes in cinema glass. The company is founded on the principles of creating a lens that works within your lifestyle to capture the images you want. This isn't a lens you would say is designed for the outdoors or made for fashion videography. Instead, it's sort of a blank canvas lens with a unique look and texture. When we first opened the boxes, we were quite pleased with how they were packaged and shipped. Each of the three lenses came in its own robust case, and the padding inside the case means it's easy to store the lens without any concern of its safety. As soon as you pick up any of these lenses, you'll instantly feel how well made and solid they are. Each of these lenses has an industry standard front diameter, so you can use it with matte boxes and other accessories you have on hand. These Gnosis lenses have a native LPL mount, and LPL stands for Large Positive Lock, which is used for mostly Ari's large format cameras. LPL isn't as popular of a mount as PL is, so you'll just have to kind of swap that out, but no worries. In the Gnosis case, you have a PL mount already that comes with and all the equipment you need to attach it to the lens. When we did it, we found the process to be easy, simple, and there's a nice video on how to do it. It took us about 10 minutes. There is something on this lens that I think detracts from its value simply on how it looks. Granted, this is just my opinion, but the massive gray play card that says "Make Your Movie" seems a little bit unprofessional and immature. Sure, it is inspirational, but inspirational to whom? The film world, believe it or not, is a little judgy. In the high-end filmmaking world, more directors and DPs care about name recognition and branding. They would be hesitant to change from established brands in Ari and Cook with a proven track record of performance. If we were to use these lenses on a high-end shoot, we would have to sell them as a serious competitor to these established brands. And having this type of visual branding visible on the lens makes that job harder. Now, luckily for DZO, one of the best features of this lens is located right beneath the logo, the focus rings. The focus rings on these lenses are so buttery, they move like a greased up pig in a slip and slide. It's nice and smooth, which is very compelling for capturing those fluid shifts in focus. But there's something a little unnerving about how smooth it is. Turning the focus rings feels so light that it almost feels loose. On a macro lens, this is a great problem to have compared to the alternative to the massive throw of macro lenses, but we really kind of wish that DZO stamped it a little bit more. It feels like it's almost broken. I found this to be quite comparable to other macro lenses, such as the Irix 150mm. Overall, these lenses are sturdy and robust. They are trying to subtly get in on Ari's market, but the effort, in my opinion, is neither subtle nor successful. So really, DZO's best bet is to have stunning performance and image quality at a stunning price. While we can't legitimately compare it to Cook and Ari for the price difference, it is closer to our Sigma FFs in that price point. It's actually 2 times the Sigma to be exact. So we're expecting twice the performance. Obviously, one of the big things that we look for in using a cinema macro lens is chromatic aberration. Oftentimes in lenses with a wider aperture, as more light passes through the lens, there's an increased likelihood that some wavelengths of light will not be refracted properly. Color fringing occurs when that refractive index on the lens deviates from the wavelength of the light. What that means is, hey, you're going to see some green or purple fringing at high contrasting areas. Now, it's fun to see these colors pop up here and there like magic, but if you're on a professional shoot, it's not fun at all. And if, for example, you were in a situation where you're shooting a high contrast environment, like a company logo of any sort on a reflective surface, the chances are much higher that you're going to see some chromatic fringing in those areas of extreme light change. Now, on the DZOs, it was actually only when we stopped down to aperture f11 that I noticed some chromatic aberration. But again, this is a macro lens, so to get the most of a lens, you'll always be wanting to stop down anyway, usually 5/6 or greater. The lack of chromatic aberration in the Gnosis lenses are remarkably better than what we've seen in all the other macros I've worked with. Now, if I had to pick one of the 3 DZO lenses as a standout for image quality, I'd have to say the 65mm is the strongest. It was sharp, created a nice cascade fall off, and could honestly compare with a Cooke 65mm lens or a Sururi 50mm lens. The DZO Gnosis lens set could be a game changer at this bargain of a price, and we excitedly jumped to purchase them to see if they were worth the hype. But as an affordable alternative, we really wanted to see how they compared to our Sigma and Tokina lenses. But after borrowing Ari's trade mounting system, it was hard to use these lenses without comparing DZO to Ari. Ultimately, the Gnosis lenses don't stack up to Ari's image quality, and they shouldn't for this price point. DZO has made a macro set that can capture a crisp image, but it's not the knock your socks off kind of image that looks more real than real life. Ari does that. And if I'm on a professional set and have the option to work with Ari lenses, I'm going to default to those lenses. Now, the only win DZO has over Ari is in the pricing. The Gnosis set costs $15,000, while just one of Ari's master macro lenses costs $35,000. But when it comes to money, you can usually just rent these lenses on a set, and they compare pretty nicely in the entire budget of things. Now, what Gnosis has is a full frame coverage, and that's not really seen in the macro world except for one other company, the Sururis. Ultimately, what we've been doing in this review is viewing these lenses and comparing them to other lenses at this price point. So let's stick to this price point and compare the DZO Gnosis lenses to other lenses at this price point or at a lesser price point. So we set up a scene and used our motion control robot to conduct a test between the Gnosis, the Sigma, the Tokinas, and the Sururis. Lighting, camera movements, everything stayed consistent except the lens we're using. And to note, we captured this all full frame on our Z-Cam f6. In our arsenal of lenses, I would have to say that the Sigma lenses are the sharpest lenses that we own under 10K. Compared to the Sigma lenses, the Gnosis is fairly comparable sharpness-wise, but not quite as clean. Now, the Gnosis has a Sigma speed at close distances because obviously the Sigmas aren't a macro lens, they're a standard lens. And when comparing things like the fall-off, it's really up to your personal discretion. Bear in mind, the Sigmas, not macro lenses, so I was kind of surprised to see that the Sigma 35mm was nearly as close focusing as the Gnosis 32mm lens. Now in this instance, you can clearly see that the close focus advantage of the true macro lenses is above that of a standard lens. The Sigma has a crisp and definitive fall-off in the mid to close range of distances, but most of our elements that are out of focus are still recognizable. For the most part, I would say visually, the big difference is that the Sigmas create depth around the subject, while the Gnosis pull the subject out of the scene. On the Gnosis, you start to have visual elements that are unrecognizable in the background and kind of blown out. Next, we'll take a look at how the DZO brand compares to the Tokina. Now, both are similar in that the T-stop increases at different distances, causing a darker image. Since the Tokina has a lot of chromatic aberration, obviously the Gnosis comes out on top overall, particularly when comparing the Gnosis 90mm to the Tokina 100mm. The Sururi lenses were comparable to the performing quality of the Gnosis lenses, but they were definitely performing above their price point. Now, a quick breakdown of the 3 lenses' individual performances. The 32mm Gnosis is pretty interesting. There are not many macro wide-angle lenses out there, with one of the most famous ones being the Laowa probe lens, which costs less and has a very distinctive look. But the look of the 32mm is not as distinctive and not as distinguished as the 65mm macro lens. The 65mm is the best. There are not many 65mm lenses out there that are this cheap and this great of quality. Some of the other 65mm lenses on the market are Cooke Panchro lenses, which cost $13,000 for a single lens. So the 65mm DZO has the best value for the quality. The 90mm is probably not the best compared to the quality. Now, you have the very high end of macro lenses on Ari and Cooke at 100mm macro. We have some really nice lower priced 100mm macro lenses that match the quality of the Gnosis or exceeds it. And I know we're talking about S35 versus full frame, but really when you're talking about macro work, you're looking for that 100mm S35 look. It's a distinct look, and you're not going to get that on a full frame 90mm lens. At the end of the day, the DZO Gnosis lens set performed well. When not being used in their macro capacity though, I'm not sure what features they have to really distinguish them from other standard lenses. DZO appeals to those who are looking for a full frame macro, but at these particular focal lengths, they're not really making it for us. And they're a great alternative for something high quality than the Surui lenses without having to get to the Ari price range. But for us to invest, DZO is going to have to outperform the rest of the lenses in our arsenal, and that did not happen. They are good, but when I already have the Sigma lenses and now the Surui set, these don't offer anything I don't already have. For the 90mm lens, unfortunately we're going to have to pass on that too, as it simply didn't perform to the same standard as the Tokina or IRIX 150mm for the S35. In the long run, lenses tend to be quite cheap for DPs to rent, so they tend to just have their pick of the best lenses, and that's why you always see Aris and Cookes on set. So why would someone reach for these over an Ari, Sigma, or Tokina? It's possible DZO will get to this point, but as a $15,000 investment, I don't like the risk that these might sit unused on the shelf gathering dust. For the stuff I'm interested in shooting, I don't need to buy another 3 sets of lenses when I have others that already compare. We hope you enjoyed going beyond the specs of the DZO Gnosis lenses. Please drop any questions or comments below, and be sure to check out our previous videos. We'll see you next time.